Hello friends, this is Sanket. Our today's topic is how to create a media player in iOS application. So now here in today's topic we had discussed about the AVKit and AVFoundation framework. So now if you want to create a audio player and video player types of functionality for the application, you have to use AVKit and AVFoundation framework. So now let's start to create the new projects. So now here I'm creating one single view applications, and now here my product name is media player app. So now click on next and create. So now here in this application I'm using a two different framework for the creating a media player. Okay, so now at that time you have to use a framework. So now first you have to add to required in your application. So now first which framework we can use and how to add it. So now simply just go to the build phases and the link binary with library option and the click on add button. So now here in this window you can see the lots of frameworks and libraries are there, but here I'm creating a media player application. So now we have to require AVKit and AVFoundation framework. Okay, so now simply just select this framework, click on add. Now here you can see in your projects, you can see the one frameworks folders is created. Now before we implementing, so now we have to require to import framework. So now there are the two framework here we have to use. First is AVFoundation and the second one is AVKit. Okay, so now here simply you have to import our second framework AVKit. Okay, now again before we implementation, let's try to design our screen first. So now go to your main.storyboard. Now for the media player here we have to require two buttons. So now let's start with first the change my background color. So now here go to the control library and you have to just drag and drop one button. Now then after you have to also change the height and width of this button. So now here for example here I'm creating one button. Let's try to modify the button title. So now here this is for the audio player. Now I'm increasing the font text size and change the background color of this button. So now here I'm creating one button for the audio player. Now here I'm creating one another button for the video player. Okay, so now again simply I have to modify the button title. So now here I am creating two buttons, one is audio player and second one is video player. So now on this button click I want the default iPhone media player. So now how to implement it? So now first we have to try to create the action of this button. So now simply first create the button action. So now here I am creating the first button action as a BTN audio player, then I am creating the second button action as a BTN video player. Okay, so now here I am creating the both button action. Now let's try to implement first. Okay, so now here whenever you use the audio and video, okay, according to your requirement, so now we have to require first AVFoundation and AVKit framework. But here we have a two different option to accessing a audio and video player according to your content. So now content, it means your MP3 and MP4 file. So now here for the audio player we have to require one MP3 file, and for the video player we have to require MP4 file. Okay, so now first before we implementation you have to require to add MP3 and MP4 file in your projects. So now first how to add it? So now simply just select the add file. So now here I'm adding one mp3 and mp4 file in my projects. So now in desktop, here I have two different files. This is the mp4 and this is the mp3. So now here you can see I have loaded this mp4 file on our media player using video player button click, and I have loaded this mp3 file, okay, now using this audio player button click. Now let's try to implement first using audio player. So now first you have to get your file path, okay. It means whenever you load any file, means whenever you load any content like as mp3 or mp4 from your projects, now first you have to get your content path. So now how to get path? So now here I am creating one object as a file path. So now here first you have to select your audio file, okay, from these projects. So now how to select it? So now here we have one class as a bundle, okay. Now bundle dot main dot path for resource, because in your project so many different types of files are here, but we have to select a specific file. So now here my file name is new song. So now it means my resource is new song. So now write down your file name, then of type, it means your file type. So now here my file type is mp3. So now using this object I have selected this file, okay. Now then after, first I have to load this file on our media player. So now how to load it? So now first, for the accessing your iPhone media player, we have to use one object. So now here I am creating one object, the name is media player. So now here for the creating, means accessing your media player, we have one class AV player controller, okay. So now this class is used to help to accessing your default media player. So now here I am creating one object for the media player. Now then after I have to also create player option, okay. So now here I have to require one another class, it's a AV player, okay. So now this class is used to access your player functionality like the play, pause, forward, backward, volume, okay. So now how to use it? So now simply first you have to load your content, it means load your content with AV player. So now how to use it? So now simply player option is equals to AV player. So now we have one method of URL. It means first whenever you load any content on your player, you have to use this method AV player of URL. So now here you have to pass your file path. So now here I am pass the file path objects. So now here, now then after your file is selected, your content is loaded. Now it's time to play this file on your media player. So now how to use it? So now simply you have to play this file on this your media player. So now you have to use these objects, it means media player dot player, okay. Whenever you play any content on your media player, at that time you have to use this method, means media player, it means it's a object of AV player view controller. Now dot player, it's a method, now equals to, okay. So now here you have to pass your loaded content. So now here I have to play as a player option, okay. So now this is the, now here I am using one error, so you have to resolve it. So now here I am clicking this option. Now your player is loaded. Now simply you have to present your player screen. using present method. So now here present your media player. So now here I am presenting our AV player view controller objects, and now then animated always true, and then completion always nil. So now here your audio player is ready to play. Okay, so now here you have to use AV player view controller for accessing your media player, and then you have to use AV player class for accessing your player objects. Okay, so now here you can see cannot convert a value of type string to expected argument URL. Yeah, because here I am using a directly bundle, but here you have to use like that file path, because this method is returning a URL format. So now here I am converting as a URL, and then here I am using file URL with path. So now here you can use the bundle dot main dot path for resource. So now resource, it means your file name. So now new song, and then of type, it means here you have to pass your file type. Okay, so now here your audio player is ready to play. So now here I am using a two different class, AV player view controller and the AV player. Okay, now let's try to implement our media player, it means video player. So now same code you have to implement. Okay, so now simply just copy and paste it. So now simply just copy this code and paste into your video player. Now you have to change only your file name. So now here I want here as a video. So now here write down your video file name. So now here my file name is my video. Okay, it means this file. And now the of type means file type is MP4. Okay, so now here your video player is also ready to create. Now let's try to run your application. So now let's see the output. So now it's rocking to use our audio and video player using AVFoundation and AVKit framework. So now here I am using two different framework for accessing your default media player of this iPhone. So now here run your application and see the output. So now just hold it, your application is on the way. So now here on the first time it's a time taking process, so don't worry, just patient. Now your application is it's ready to load. Okay, now here on this button click, I want the audio player. So now simply just click on this button. Now see. Okay, now your default audio player will be appear. So now this is your audio player. Now here you can see the option. Now I am click on play button. Okay, now feel the music. Okay, so now this is the audio player. Here I am using a audio player functionality using AVFoundation and AVKit framework. Okay, so now this is the audio player. Now here let's try to load our video. So now again just click on button. Now play. Now you can see. Okay, now you feel a video. So now here I am loaded one MP4 clip on my simulator. So now this is the video player. Okay, now you have to also use the different types of option, like as you have to if you want a full screen. So now here click on this button. Okay, now then after you have to also use a rotate. So now your player is by default responsive. Okay, so now this is the player. You have to also use the different types of functionality, like is forward, backward. Okay, so now this is the video player. So now this is the audio player and video player. So now here I am creating, it means here I am accessing your default audio and video using iPhone media player for the AVFoundation and AVKit framework. So now here I am creating the media player application using AVFoundation and AVKit framework. So now this is the media player applications. Thank you.